Number 1. Italian is a Romance language which is Latin-based, so it uses the same alphabet and letters as English. However, the letters J, K, W, X, and Y are not part of the Italian alphabet and are considered foreign. They're mainly used for loanwords, scientific terms, and proper names, as native Italian words typically use other letters to show similar sounds. In any case, many English and Italian words have common roots, because both languages borrow heavily from Latin. Number 2. Italian has accents on vowels, and they're necessary for words that are stressed on the final syllable, certain verb forms, and some homographs that are spelled the same but pronounced with different stress. Although the topic of accents is for the alphabet, it's important to mention it beforehand. In short, Italian has the grave accent and the acute accent, but in writing, the grave accent is the standard and dominates more, while the acute accent only appears on a few words. Either way, accents are vital because they're mainly used for final stress, clarity, and a few verb forms. Number 3. The word order is basic, like in English, consisting of a subject, verb, and object. But there are key differences, like adjectives coming after nouns and objects, and pronouns that are placed before the verb. Number 4. Italian verb tenses have similar functions to English, consisting of the present, past, future, conditional, and imperative. Even if the concepts are formed differently, they're still the same, sharing identical punctuation and writing concepts, like periods, commas, and question marks. Number 5. Italian is much more inflected than English, which means that it has grammatical gender, masculine or feminine, which affects articles, adjective forms, and verb agreements in compound tenses. For instance, the expressions il ragazzo, la ragazza, una casa grande show a distinction in gender, where articles and adjectives must agree in gender and number. English does not have this concept, so it's something to get used to. Number 6. Conjugation is central in Italian because verbs change for person and number, having endings for verb conjugations. Italian verbs are also categorized into 3 main groups based on their infinitive endings: are, ere, and ire. Each group has a different conjugation pattern, and within the ere and ire groups, many verbs are irregular. Number 7. Italian pronouns function differently, especially those that are object and reflexive pronouns. While a pronoun is placed after a conjugated verb in English, such tiny words can move before the verb, attach to the verb, or merge with other forms in Italian. This is a fairly complex concept, but it will become logical. Number 8. Italian has a formal you, consisting of tu and lei. Tu is the informal you, which is used with friends, family, and peers. On the other hand, lei is the formal you that is used with respect, strangers, and professionals, and it follows third-person grammatical rules. Number 9. Italian has more articles than English, which makes them more frequent and creates general meanings. As such, the language uses articles in many contexts where English doesn't, like subjects, possessives, days of the week, and countries, apart from placing them before nouns. Number 10. Italian pronunciation is far simpler than English and is more consistent and phonological. Every letter corresponds to one sound, unlike English, yet Italian is more complex with double consonants and open and closed e and o. For example, double consonants are pronounced with a longer sound and require a slight pause before them. This doubling can change the meaning of a word, so correct pronunciation is needed, like in the words pala, palla, 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 casa, cassa, casa, cassa. All consonants can be doubled in Italian, except H. And for this reason, reading will be very simple once you get used to it. Number 11. Italian has two main verbs that express to be, essere and stare. However, essere is the main verb for to be, which is used for identity, origin, essential characteristics, passive voice, and location in many cases. On the other hand, stare can be translated as to be, but it's far more restricted. It expresses temporary conditions, location in some contexts, the progressive tense, and certain idiomatic expressions. This topic should be thoroughly explained in a separate video, but the concept does create a distinction between something permanent and temporary. Number 12. Italian has the aspect of a progressive tense, but it's used lexically and not grammatically. This means that Italian can express progression, which is equivalent to be plus ing in English. However, while this form exists, the language uses it less often, because in spoken Italian, the simple present is more common, while the progressive would emphasize that an action is happening right now, using stare plus a gerund. It also explains why stare is used, because it's needed for temporary progressive actions. In English, we use was or were plus ing for continuous actions, while in Italian, the imperfect past tense is sufficient. In other words, Italian does not need stare plus a gerund for a continuous action, because the imperfect already shows progression. The difference is that Italian marks it only when necessary, for duration and incompleteness. Number 13. Italian has a lot of variations in its past tense. While this may be a confusing element in the language, it is helpful to understand the conceptual system. Italian doesn't just have the past tense like English, saying I ate or I was eating. Instead, it has multiple ways to talk about the past, and each one carries a nuance about how the speaker views an action, whether it's completed, ongoing, habitual, or literary. In essence, Italian has several compound tenses which are formed by combining a conjugated auxiliary verb, avere, to have, or essere, to be, with a past participle. While such concepts need to be explained separately in future videos, I will just mention them here, so you know what to expect. The most common past form is the conversational present perfect, describing completed past actions and focusing on the result of an action. This tense overlaps with two English tenses, the simple past, as in ate, or the present perfect, as in have eaten. It also uses the auxiliary verbs avere or essere, followed by a past participle. Another form is the imperfect past, which describes ongoing and habitual past actions. In English, this can mean using was or were doing, used to do, or a long-lasting past tense. English also splits this concept across the progressive tense, while Italian expresses it all with the imperfect. Another form is the past perfect, which is a familiar concept in English, expressing had done. This form describes an action that happened before another past action, also using auxiliary verbs. A different form is the simple literary past, which is not to be confused with the present perfect. This tense is mainly used for the distant past and literary narratives, and it's equivalent to the English simple past, but is stylistically elevated in Italian. The last form is the remote past perfect, which is a literary version of the tense. This form is extremely historical and archaic, which is common in formal storytelling. To conclude this point, Italian has many past forms because the language evolved from Latin, which had rich verb systems with past nuances. While learning to speak Italian, many past expressions will be compound or imperfect, and the rest are literary. So, Italian has more distinctions in the past, while English compresses them. Number 14. Italian has a lot of variations in the subjunctive mood, expressing things that are unreal, using emotion, doubt, desire, and necessity, which all lead to the idea of possibility and uncertainty. While English can have modal verbs, tone, or specific structures, Italian uses the subjunctive similarly. If you have seen my French grammar video, I give a thorough explanation of the subjunctive mood because it's the same fundamental in any language. Italian will have the same format towards the end of the grammar because generally many learners know what it's used for but don't understand the purpose of the mood. The generic definition is that it's used for emotion, doubt, desire, and necessity. But in reality, all of these ideas express possibility and uncertainty. It's also why the subjunctive is a mood and not a tense, because a mood is a temporary state of mind. I indicate this in the beginning so that you can understand what the subjunctive actually means. And in Italian, there are 4 variations. The present subjunctive is used when the main verb expresses uncertainty, and this form is the most common in spoken Italian. The imperfect subjunctive is used after some expressions when referring to the past, or in hypothetical situations. It's also the second most common variation in Italian speech. The past subjunctive has a compound form with a past participle, which is used when the action happened before the main verb. This form is the third most common. The last variation is the past perfect subjunctive, consisting of auxiliary verbs and past participles. It's used for the past before the past, especially in hypothetical and literary writing, and it's almost never used in spoken Italian. In conclusion, Italian has many subjunctives because it allows very precise distinctions, especially in the past, and this idea makes the language incredibly expressive. Overall, these are things to know before learning Italian, and in the next videos, Italian grammar can begin, and grammatical concepts can be learned.